Voice-over narrator. They cuffed her on the spot, accused of impersonating a Navy SEAL. The uniform looked too perfect. The badges, flawless. But when the general stepped closer, he froze. He noticed one small detail, something only real operators carry. And in that second, everything changed. Was she faking it, or one of them? What the general said next left the entire room silent. The beat paused. Before you judge her story, wait till you hear what was in that patch pocket. Because what they found didn't just clear her name, it rewrote military history. If you love real-life military twists, secrets, and honor stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button, 'cause this one's going to blow your mind. The morning air was crisp at the naval base, the kind of cold that carried the scent of salt and metal. Soldiers marched in neat rows, their boots hitting the ground in a steady rhythm. At the main gate, a woman in a Navy uniform approached with calm, confident steps. Her cap was low, her shoulders straight, her medals gleaming in the sunlight. Every movement she made felt disciplined, deliberate, like someone who had done this 1,000 times before. At first glance, she looked every bit like a decorated officer. Her name tag read, Eld Harper. The guards at the gate noticed her before she even reached the checkpoint. There was something about her presence, quiet but commanding, that made them straighten up a little. When she handed over her ID, the guard gave her a respectful nod before scanning the card through the system. But within seconds, the smile faded from his face. The screen flashed red. Record not found. He tried again. Same result. He looked up at her, confused. Ma'am, could you wait a moment? He said, his tone polite but firm. She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Of course, she replied, her voice calm, steady, too steady. The guard signaled to another officer, who came over and took the ID for a closer look. The tension in the air thickened as whispers started among the guards. One of them muttered, no clearance level, no record, no digital trace, who the hell is she? Within minutes, a pair of military police vehicles pulled up. The soldiers stepped out, their tone less polite now. Lieutenant Harper, we're going to need you to come with us. She looked at them, her expression unreadable. There must be a mistake, she said quietly. One of the officers stepped closer, his hand hovering over his weapon. Mom, please remove your cap. She hesitated, just for a second, then slowly removed it, revealing short, cropped hair, a few scars just visible near her temple. Her face was strong, tired, marked by the kind of experiences most people couldn't imagine. The officer studying her narrowed his eyes. I've never seen you on this base before. Who gave you that uniform? When she didn't answer, he took a step closer. You understand that impersonating a SEAL officer is a federal offense, right? Still, she said nothing. Her hands were at her sides, perfectly still. That silence made them uneasy. One officer scoffed, she's good. I'll give her that uniform's perfect. But fake? Another tried to grab her arm, but she moved slightly, instinctively, just enough to show she'd been trained. The grip he used, the way she shifted her weight, it wasn't something a civilian could mimic. Don't resist, the officer barked. She exhaled softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not resisting. They cuffed her anyway. The metal clinked around her wrists, cold and tight. As they led her toward the vehicle, the other soldiers watched in silence. Some whispered. Some looked confused. One young Marine muttered, she doesn't look like a faker. Inside the vehicle, she sat quietly, her eyes fixed out the window. Through the reflection, she could still see the gate, the base she once knew so well, the same walls she'd protected years ago. Now she was being treated like an enemy. At the checkpoint, one of the guards picked up her uniform cap. Inside the rim was a faint, worn marking. A small hand-stitched number that only a handful of people would recognize, but no one looked close enough to notice. As the car pulled away, her expression didn't change. She had expected this. The moment she decided to return, she knew someone would question her. But she also knew, sooner or later, someone would recognize the truth. The vehicle turned toward the military holding facility. The officers in front kept talking, laughing, convinced they had just caught a fake hero. But in the back seat, she sat calm, focused, her eyes steady, like a soldier waiting for her next mission. The sound of the metal cuffs didn't bother her. She'd worn worse things before. What they didn't know, what none of them could imagine, was that the woman they just arrested had worn that same uniform on real soil in real battles. And the story they thought was over was only just beginning. The metal door slammed shut behind her with a hollow echo that filled the room. The air inside was heavy, a mix of dust, coffee, and tension. The interrogation room was small, cold, and bare except for a steel table, 2 chairs, and a flickering light that hummed like a dying engine. She sat down slowly, her hands still cuffed, her posture straight, her eyes fixed on the wall ahead. There was no fear on her face, no panic, just a calm, almost haunted stillness. The kind that comes from someone who's seen worse than this. 2 investigators entered the room. One was young, too confident for his age, slamming a file on the table. The other was older, quiet, observant, the kind who'd seen too many liars and too few truths. "Name," the younger one demanded. She didn't answer. He repeated louder, "Your name?" "Ma'am." Still silence. The older man leaned back in his chair, watching her closely. "You already know what the ID said," she replied softly. "Lieutenant Harper." The younger investigator scoffed. "That name doesn't exist in our system. You're wearing a SEAL uniform. And as far as I know, there are no female SEALs." He leaned closer, smirking. "So, tell me, Lieutenant, who sent you? Are you part of some stunt, a protest, or maybe something worse?" Her eyes lifted, slow and steady. "I don't do stunts," she said, her voice even. "And if you think I'm here to harm your people, you're wasting time." That calm confidence only irritated him. He opened a file showing her photos, blurry images of her entering the base, copies of her fake ID, and close-ups of her medals. "You expect me to believe you earned these," he said. "You have no service record, no assignment logs, no digital trace. Nothing." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile, not amusement, more like disbelief. "Sometimes the ones who do the real work aren't written in your files," she said quietly. The younger investigator slammed his fist on the table. "Cut the mystery. Harper, who are you really?" The older man, still studying her, noticed something. Her uniform, while perfect, was missing a rank patch on the right shoulder. He frowned. "Your patch," he said. "Why isn't it there?" She glanced at the spot, then looked back at him. "Because I lost the right to wear it," she said softly. That answer hit differently. The room went silent for a moment. The younger man frowned, thrown off. "Lost the right. What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't answer. Her gaze drifted down to her cuffed wrists, pale skin bruised from the metal, then back up to the flickering light above. The tension in the air thickened. The door suddenly opened and both investigators turned. A tall figure stepped inside, a general, gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of presence that silenced a room. He scanned the scene and frowned. "What's going on here?" The younger officer straightened instantly. "Sir, we found her at the front gate wearing full SEAL uniform, no record, fake ID. She's refusing to talk." The general's gaze moved to her, and for a brief second, something shifted in his expression. He didn't see a criminal. He saw someone familiar. Not her face exactly, but her bearing, the way she sat, silent but alert, the way her eyes scanned the room, mapping every exit, every threat. That wasn't the behavior of a pretender. He stepped closer, his boots echoing softly against the concrete. As his eyes dropped to her hands, he noticed something unusual. A paracord bracelet tied around her wrist. It was frayed at the edges, one end burned off, the pattern distinct. A kind of weave only field operators used, not something you could buy in a store. His breath caught slightly. He leaned forward. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his tone lower now, not harsh, curious. She looked at him, eyes steady, unblinking. "You tell me, sir," she said quietly. "You were there." For a moment, no one spoke. The younger investigator looked between them, confused. The general's expression hardened, a wave of recognition flashing through his eyes. He'd seen that bracelet before, years ago, in a desert, during a mission gone wrong. The soldier who wore it never came back. The room that once felt cold suddenly felt colder. The general straightened, his jaw tightening. "Uncuff her," he ordered. The officers hesitated. "Sir, she's—" I said, "uncuff her." His voice left no room for question. The younger man obeyed, unlocking the cuffs with shaky hands. The woman rubbed her wrists lightly but didn't say a word. The general looked at her for a long moment. "You shouldn't exist," he muttered, almost to himself. She met his eyes. "Neither should you," she said softly. And for the first time that day, the general didn't see an imposter. He saw a ghost from a mission the world had forgotten. The room was silent, thick with confusion. The younger investigators stood frozen beside the table, still trying to process what just happened. The general's sharp gaze stayed locked on the woman's wrist, that worn, faded paracord bracelet. To everyone else, it was just a piece of cord, something cheap and meaningless. But to him it was a memory carved in dust and fire. He had seen that exact weave before, sand-baked, blood-stained, made from a parachute cord cut in the middle of a firefight. He took a slow step forward, his voice lower now, almost uncertain. "Where did you get that?" he asked again. This time, the tone was different, not a question of authority, but of recognition. She didn't look away. "From Bravo Team," she said softly. "Ramadi 2007. You remember?" The words hit him like a blow. The younger investigator looked at her confused. "Ramadi. That's Iraq. What's she talking about?" The general ignored him. His eyes narrowed. That unit was classified, every record sealed, everyone gone. His voice faltered slightly. "Who are you?" She straightened her posture. "Corpsman Alyssa Moore," she said quietly. "Attached to Bravo Team under provisional clearance. Medical support, embedded off the record." The general's face went pale. He remembered that name, barely. A medic, temporary assignment, assigned for a rescue mission that turned into a nightmare. Officially, the mission never happened. The operation was wiped from history, every name, every file. They were ambushed deep inside insurgent territory. The mission leader was killed. Most of the team was presumed dead, including their medic. He had written her name on the list himself. "You were declared KIA?" he whispered. She nodded slightly. "I know. You signed the report." The younger officer blinked in disbelief. "Sir, this can't be real. There's no record." "No." The general raised a hand to silence him. His eyes were still on her. "You're telling me you survived that ambush?" "I didn't," she said softly. "Not on paper." She leaned forward, her eyes steady, voice calm. "We were pinned for 3 days. Only 2 of us made it out. He didn't survive the flight. After that, I went dark. My extraction never registered. They erased me." For a moment, the general couldn't speak. He remembered the screams over the radio, the static, the explosion. The last voice they heard before the line went dead had been a woman's. A medic, calling for an evac that never came. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "You wore that bracelet, why?" She looked down at the paracord, gently twisting it between her fingers. "He made it for me," she said quietly. "Said if I ever got home, I'd know who I was. Operators don't wear names. They wear memories." The general's eyes softened, just slightly, the hard edge of his military composure cracking for the first time. "You came back here," he said. "Why?" She took a breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "To visit the memorial, to bring his tag home, that's all. I didn't expect anyone to recognize me." The younger investigator shook his head. "But why wear the uniform? You knew what it would cause." Her eyes flicked toward him. "Because it's not a costume, it's mine." The general stepped closer slowly, studying every line of her face, beneath the fatigue, the scars, the distance. He saw something that made his chest tighten. The unshakable discipline of someone who had lived the battlefield. No imposter could fake that. No actor could hold that gaze. He turned to the younger officer.
"Leave us." "Sir, no."
The door closed behind him. The room fell silent again. The general leaned forward, his tone soft but heavy. "We buried a flag for you," he said quietly. "You don't know what that did to us." "I do," she whispered. "I watched it from the hill. I couldn't go down there." The general looked away, trying to steady his breath. Years of discipline couldn't stop the sting in his chest. "You saved men who were already lost," he said finally. "You don't need to hide anymore." She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "With all respect, General, some ghosts shouldn't come home." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the light filled the silence. Then, the general reached forward, his hand brushing against the paracord bracelet. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Only operators carry that." Her eyes met his, calm and unflinching. "Exactly," she said. The dawn light was creeping through the blinds when the truth finally surfaced. Hours had passed since the interrogation ended, but the general was still sitting in the same cold room with her. The chaos outside had quieted down. The guards who once looked at her with suspicion now avoided eye contact altogether. Her uniform, once called fake, now seemed too real, too heavy with history. The air between them was thick, not with tension anymore, but with a silent understanding. The general's voice broke the silence first. "You know," he said slowly, "the day your team went dark, Command ordered a blackout. We couldn't even say your names out loud. We called it a failed op, but it wasn't. You bought us time. You saved a lot of lives. She looked up, her face calm but distant. We didn't save enough. He studied her expression, that quiet pain in her eyes, the kind soldiers carried long after the war ended. What happened out there? Alyssa, he asked softly. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the wall as if it could take her back in time. We were ambushed. Intel was wrong. There were twice as many hostiles. The team leader was hit in the first few minutes. I dragged him behind a truck, tried to keep him breathing. We ran out of ammo, out of options. I used what I could, patches, morphine, duct tape. It wasn't enough. When the blast hit, I thought it was over. Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it. I woke up in a farmhouse 3 days later. Locals found me, patched me up. By the time I reached the extraction zone, it was empty. No one was left. I saw our flag folded in their hands and realized I was gone. Officially dead. I didn't correct them. The general exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. You could have come back. You could have told someone. She looked at him, eyes hollow but strong. And tell them what? That the mission they buried wasn't a failure. That their ghosts were still walking around. No one would have believed me. Sometimes it's easier to stay dead. He nodded slowly, a deep sadness settling in his chest. There was nothing to argue. The truth had been buried long before she returned. Then she reached into her pocket, the one the guards had searched earlier, and pulled out a small, dented dog tag. She placed it gently on the table. The metal caught the weak light and gleamed faintly. This belonged to Sergeant Kane, she said softly. He saved me when the explosion hit. I've carried it ever since. I came here to leave it at the memorial. That's all. The general's hand trembled slightly as he picked it up. His thumb brushed over the engraved name. He remembered Kane, brave, stubborn, loud, one of his best. For a moment, the years between now and then disappeared. He was a good man, the general said quietly. The best, she whispered. The door opened. Outside, the base had gathered. Quiet murmurs, soldiers lined in rows, words spreading fast. The woman arrested this morning wasn't an imposter, someone whispered. She was one of them. As she stood to leave, the general stopped her. Wait. He straightened his uniform and gave a slow, deliberate salute. The room fell silent. The guards who had once dragged her in now stood at attention. The air felt charged, like history was being rewritten in real time. She hesitated, then returned the salute, crisp, steady, perfect. For a brief second, she looked every bit the soldier she had always been. The general's voice, low but firm, broke the silence. Welcome home, operator. She smiled faintly. Home, she repeated softly. That's a word I haven't heard in a while. Then she turned and walked toward the sunlight streaming through the open door. The same gate where she had been arrested now stood wide open. No handcuffs, no suspicion. Just the sound of boots on concrete, steady, measured, proud. As she passed the memorial wall, she paused, placed Sergeant Kane's tag gently at its base, and whispered something only she could hear. The wind caught her words and carried them away. Behind her, the general stood silently at the entrance, his eyes fixed on the figure walking out of the base. He knew the world would never know her story, not officially, but he also knew that within these walls, among those who understood sacrifice, she'd never be forgotten. And as the sun rose over the base, its light glinting off the steel names etched in stone, one thought echoed in his mind. The same words he'd said before, now heavy with meaning. Only operators carry that. Real heroes deserve to be remembered. Which part of the country are you watching from?